Well, today we have Marcus Hall with us, who is the branch director of the YMCA here in Kalona. Thanks for being on the podcast, Marcus. Excited.
John, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you. And before we get in, I have a bunch of questions and like topics, things we can talk about. But I guess like the one thing that I'm most curious about is like, how are you just like dying to play basketball again? Like, what is that like being the director of, you know, a YMCA during COVID-19? What's that like?
Oh, man. Yeah, it's been tough. You know, you try to have like a relative sense of urgency with something, but I miss it so bad. It's, you know, my main form of exercise. And, you know, I was telling you, like, I can't run on a treadmill for 5 minutes, but I could chase a basketball for 2 hours. So I miss playing in the exercise and having a game to go to. I also just miss like being around people, like the high fives, the good jobs, the, you know, pickup basketball kind of reveals everybody for who they are, kind of.
Yeah.
So, you know, I miss being competitive like that, and I miss being on the same team as people and just having that kind of build up that, you know, I knew it was awesome and how much we play pickup basketball. And I knew how great the game is, but, you know, anytime you're just in a snap of fingers removed from it, you realize just never to take it for granted again, because just being active with people and playing the game you love is something that doesn't last forever. So
Sure, absolutely. So you guys are doing a kind of a half capacity open next week. Is that true?
Yep, exactly. So we have some restrictions on some of the different areas of the building, and doing our best to separate some of the equipment and, you know, just draw out some guidelines to help people stay responsible. And it's kind of a phased plan where we're going to open and be at half capacity, then try to introduce some of our typical programming and the typical way we do things back into the Y over the course of the next few weeks.
Sure. So what have been some of the challenges over the last like 2 months in terms of I know there were like classes and things that you were doing before. Did that kind of move to a Zoom platform, or did that just kind of just fall off? Yeah,
we've, I think as an association, done a good job of trying to reach folks, you know, in those areas. Fitness classes is one, you know. The YMCA for a lot of people is part of their routine. Working out is part of their routine. And so trying to connect them and keep them as much, you know, being as much a part of their routine as possible without being open is definitely a tough task. But, you know, I feel like we've tried to have some online and some avenues for them to stay connected with the Y. It's been challenging with youth sports. You know, we're going into the spring and summer season with youth baseball and softball, and so having to cancel those things and, you know, really in some ways rescheduling and replanning is almost more labor intensive than just executing the program as it was.
For sure.
So there was a phase there where we were deciding to cancel things, and then, you know, the second part of that 2 months has been spent, you know, spending time on trying to regenerate those things when we get back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and this is such an interesting time because the Wellman YMCA was done before Kalona, then Kalona, which was that a year ago?
About 18 months ago.
Yeah. So, and then the Washington Y is almost complete, and that grand opening is supposed to be June 1st. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So what's happening there exactly?
You know, it's kind of a unique little pause button. You know, I think that the YMCA, everything is so cyclical. We're always looking forward to the next season and planning, and then, you know, of course, the execution piece. But it's given the Washington Y and the leadership there the opportunity to kind of plan and have a time period where they can transition without members in the building or programs going on, that they can, you know, hit the ground running when they open.
Sure.
And then also, you know, for us, it's been a little bit of a sprint with Kalona. You know, we're trying to do a lot in trying to, you know, produce as many great things for our members as we can. That sometimes that pause button is good for us too. Just, is what we're doing right? Should we keep it up? Is it totally the wrong thing, or could we improve it in some way? And so I think Kalona and Wellman, you know, being here for that for longer than Washington, obviously, it's been in a way, you know, good for all of us just to kind of at least take a look at what we do and how we do it.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. So, speaking of kind of, you know, taking a look at your programs and things like that, you're the director of the Hardwood Academy, and that's a basketball camp. How is that going to happen this year? Do you want to talk a little bit about that and kind of your vision behind starting that and getting that going?
Yeah, definitely. So Hardwood Academy is a basketball training program that is longer in duration than a typical camp. So it started in 2015 when we took over the YMCA took over management of the old Kalona Rec Center. Mm-hmm. So it started with just a few kids, early morning workouts.
Dusty gym,
super dusty gym, like dusty after you dusted it type of gym.
Yeah.
But it started then with I have an interest in basketball. I think that I have a responsibility for all programs, but I definitely have an interest in basketball. So that fed into being ambitious with that. And then you meet that with some players who, wanted to improve. And it was a gym to me. So we started to develop those sort of things. And then, over the last 4 years, it's really grown. It occurs. So this year, typically it's throughout June and July. And last year there was 27 total sessions. This year, with the situation, we've had to delay the start till June 15th.
Okay.
And so this year we're going to go June 15th through July 31st of 2020 and offer it actually 5 days a week in Kalona and Washington. Okay. So our coaches and staff will be at each of those days. And honestly, it became a situation where I was always trying to choose the right time to do something based on everybody else's schedules, school schedules, other sports, etc. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to offer it all the time, and they can come as much as they can. So of like the 30 days, typically people come 70 to 80% of the days based on their, motivation and their individual schedules. And then also, just because it's so long, there's really opportunity to try to improve a player over that course of time and see them go through highs and lows and hopefully come out the other end, much more confident and skilled player. So that's something that, we look forward to seeing again this year with a little more compacted schedule.
Well, one of the things you touched on was that it's a program that's been growing over the last 4 years. So I'm curious, as the director and kind of the person that started it, is passionate about it, where do you see this program being in the next 4 years?
Good question. Well, the progress has been quick. I feel like the traction we've been getting lately in terms of, players that attend and then return, which shows that they felt that there's value in the experience, and then also them spreading that word and helping us help to get new players has brought us to here. So last year we had 50 players participate in the program when it was just here in Kalona. Early returns are that we're going to be, continue to grow. And I think it's just exciting to do something different. The structure of it and the format of it is different than a typical camp.
Sure.
Do it here, in our hometown where we have now great facilities. We have the resources available. And just the amount of people that we can bring in and empower to find passion or confidence or camaraderie through the game is encouraging to me, whether it's, new coaches that are able to bring in and have an impact with players, new players who are coming in and experiencing that. And then also, our collaborations and our sponsorships from people like you and Storyline Media and all the things that are, pleasantly surprisingly, they're getting behind something like this, and we're starting to see an increase in interest there too. So I think we're just going to keep growing. We're going to try to do something a little different than what a lot of other camps are, and really just try to produce players that get better over the course of the experience.
For sure.
And try to provide that to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things that you kind of mentioned was that you're starting it here. So I think you said the word home. Mm-hmm. What attracted you to this job and starting a program that you are wanting to continue to grow? And and I could be wrong, but it seems like you want this Hardwood Academy, you want it on the map, right? Mm-hmm. In as far as like basketball. So I think there's something that I really respect about starting it in your home and then just having it be such a quality program that I don't know. I maybe it's hometown pride. But I don't know if you want to just talk a little bit about that and the thought process, because, you could have gone and worked for another basketball academy, or, there's just so many options probably available to you. I'm just wondering if you want to talk a little bit about starting it here in Kalona.
Yeah, definitely. The timeline. So at the time I was hired at the Y, I was a high school basketball coach, and prior to 2015, when I started at the Y, had a few years as a high school basketball coach, and took over a program that hadn't seen a ton of success when it comes to wins and losses, or creating super high level of players. And so when it came to the number one objective when I became a coach before I started at the Y was, all right, so if we're going to be any good at basketball, no offense or no thought that I can have is going to be nearly as good as getting better basketball players and developing them. So, I learned through that experience that, number one, you got to get them to love the game, or at least help illuminate the game to them, decide if they like it or they'd like to spend time on it. And then just the benefit of, whether it's an individual or a group of people, if you work on something and you put your passion into it, you can see results and you can see things change. I think something I fell in love with early when it comes to basketball training is, you work on something in June or July and it's difficult for a player and no one else is around and it's 6 a.m. and you're trying it. And the payoff isn't until, fourth quarter on the road in the winter, 6 months later, and it's like, oh, he didn't have that before. He wouldn't have it now if it weren't for that hard work. And so just the sheer sense of accomplishment, even on a kind of a microscope, for me, and then for that player, what I saw it do for the player, I think was something that I fell in love with. And so when I started at the Y, I was still doing the coaching thing, so I kind of I knew how to do it. I knew how to generate some programs or some energy around the game of basketball. So when I started doing the Hardwood Academy workouts and essentially just working with players in this community, in addition to the players I had on the high school team. So that's kind of how it was initiated. Early on I kind of immersed myself in the game. I've always loved the game, but I then started looking at coaches and trainers and what I liked and didn't like about what certain people were doing when it came to the game. I think there's a lot more gray area when it comes to basketball than black and white. Not a lot is wrong or right to me. I think you should be able to do a lot of things, and if we can know anything about basketball, players and teams and coaches are successful in a lot of different ways. So helping them kind of reach that and not pigeonhole a player into a certain way, but being open-minded about what development looks like for everybody.
Sure.
And then I like the camaraderie. I like there's nothing quite like, Hardwood Academy. One thing about it is we're growing and growing, but we're trying to retain that small feel where we have quality coaches. So now our ratio is solid, because there is nothing quite like, having that relationship, the nuance of knowing when things are right or wrong with a player and what factors that are making that so. It's just been a source of a confidence builder. Sure. I like seeing the results that people have. When it comes to basketball, a lot of times I kind of relate it to music. Do you play any instruments, John?
No.
You don't play, so you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So one of the things that typically a parent or someone who's near a player says, well, we want to give them confidence. We'd like to instill some confidence in them, or they often even say to the player, let's take a younger player, someone who's not in high school yet, someone who's just developing, getting in the game, right? You need to play confident. And I quickly realized that the only way to do that is through hard work and mistakes. Like if I were to tell you, John, all right, here's this guitar. John, you're a great guitarist, bro. I have confidence in you. You're going to do great. You need to play that guitar with confidence, okay? All right, ready? Start the concert. You would be like, ding, what do I do, right? Sure. No matter what I said or not, how I said it, that I can't give you that confidence. So I quickly realized that this thing that we're seeking or trying to grasp is only attainable over the long haul. It's only obtainable if I tell you that now you have a year to figure out how to play guitar and you work on that guitar all the time. Sure. And now I don't need to tell you to be confident, because Now maybe it takes it longer for a guitar. I don't know. I'm not musical myself, but in a similar fashion, you don't need to tell someone that because it's in the work.
Sure.
It's in those days. It's when I step out here, it's not, okay, now what do I do? This is what I do.
For sure.
I've been doing it, and I know I have a center to get back to if things go wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think that was just the realization of that, and then the buy-in from the players and the coaches and the relationships there that, kind of help just continue to spur Hardwood Academy and into what it is now and what we're trying to get it to.
Yeah. So is there any way for you to track feedback or progress that players are making outside of the academy? I'm just curious as to because you're putting together a stellar training program, and I'm just wondering when they go when they actually put that to use, on the court, or I'm just wondering if because I'm always curious, because if I do a video for somebody and they take it and then they post it somewhere, and I don't sometimes I don't get feedback, even though there's really positive things coming out of it, and I'm just wondering if
that's actually a great question. I've ran some camps and some clinics through Breakthrough Basketball, which is an organization here in Washington they're part of, and in Breakthrough, part of the process is having a review after, where people are able to submit comments, and that's a very to the point. This is what I think. This is what I got from it. Again, that is very much. It's a shorter time period of camp, and the feedback is very direct in the form of print. Hardwood Academy, because the duration and the relationship that we're able to build, or hopefully build with our players over the course of this time, leads us to meaning it when we say, hey, we care what happens now.
Sure.
So tell me what happens now. Send me videos of what happens now. The process of improving you as a player doesn't stop the last day of camp. We try to be with that player and at a scale where we're able to stay with that player and see how they're doing in their 7th grade games now. Just knowing that if they know we care, then maybe they're open to submitting things to us from parents or players that, there's nothing better than hearing that this player is totally different than before he came. And because of that, I'm averaging more points, or I'm getting playing time, or I made this team, or just I have more fun with the game because I'm better at it. I think that's one of our missions, is just try to stay connected with that player to that degree. Because we feel like there's a dual investment. I need to do well in my position, and you need to follow through in yours, and hopefully if things go well, then you improve and you get what you want out of this game. And then secondly is do they come back? So
Sure.
One thing that differs from most camps is that it's not a sign up and we try this, and no matter how it goes, it's over in a couple of days. This is, a commitment. You're working through it. You're having tougher days than some days that are better, and so just working through the whole summer leads you to kind of have that connection regardless. So
yeah, that's cool.
We stay with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So one question that I told you I was going to ask you, because I'm really curious about this particular thing, and maybe now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, maybe it's because of the way it's portrayed in movies and television, but it seems like you're not only working with a lot of kids, but you have a lot of parents' involvement too. And so I'm sure with that, there's criticism or, we're talking about feedback. How do you deal with negative feedback? Or, because I think positive feedback, it's okay, cool, I'm doing a good job. But I'm sure that you've at some point made a parent mad somehow, right?
Yes.
And so I'm wondering, as a community leader, how do you deal with that kind of feedback, and how do you address that going forward?
That's a good question. I think first off, the input from the player can never be underestimated. So if we're talking about a super young player, kindergarten, first grader, maybe not as much, but at a certain point, the game and the maturity level of the player meets, and I value their input a lot. So sometimes what a parent is thinking or is viewing in a condensed amount of time isn't exactly what the player is experiencing or echoing.
I see.
So I try to be aware of that and try to give the opportunity for the player to speak, which in general, I feel like, I don't know if it doesn't happen enough, but you'd be surprised at what some 6th or 7th graders will tell you about the game or about where they are with the game or anything else if you just kind of ask them.
Sure.
And let them talk and don't talk for a while. So that in general takes a little of the initial pressure off, because first I want to hear from the player in conjunction with the parent, in addition to the parent, that this is what they're experiencing, this is what they're feeling. So it's not just, again, an emotional thing driven by a parent. Secondly, if your intentions are pure and you work hard and you know that at the end of the day you're tired from the hard work that you've tried to put forth, if you've given it the right thought and focus and energy and effort to every player, whether it's a sixth grader or the best high school player around, if you approach the workouts the same way and have the same attention and focus and passion towards it, then right away that gives you confidence in your decision making. So if someone is maybe a little more negative or has some things, some criticism of you, you can at least know that intentions. Men aren't perfect, but intentions are.
Sure.
So that's what I rest on a little bit, is that I'm trying, and I believe that I'm trying or we're trying. And so that counts for a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah. And
just secondly, too, the being real with them from the beginning that this isn't all going to be laid out for us perfectly. Mm-hmm. So we can't sign the form, say, let's be a way better basketball player, and then it's going to just happen for sure. Happens to different people to different levels. Everyone's starting at a different place. The rate of which we improve changes. And so not being, I just had a discussion the other day with a player. He's been going to his driveway a little bit and working him out because he's so hungry like that. He's about to be an 8th grader. And, I take so much from him. He's just such an impressive young man. And in talking with him, just realized like how big everything is to young people. They don't have experiences. They don't have downtimes where they're bouncing back from. They don't have a hard time that they saw through. If it's a bad day at practice, a lot of times it feels like the end of the world. So what I told this player, his name's Ace, he's going to be cold-blooded, but, I said, because his mom actually said, hey, thanks so much for the workout. He loved it. It was great. He wishes he would have done better, though, Yeah. And so that was his thought. And I left thinking, another great workout with him, no problem here. In fact, the opposite of a problem. We're progressing. Everything's great. He works hard. He's focused and he wants to do well. He's thinking, I didn't make enough shots.
Sure.
Or whatever. And just letting him know that, okay, so let's be realistic about this. So you're in 8th grade. You want to be a cold-blooded, like freshman, sophomore, then eventually like junior, senior, and that's what is that what you want? And then if the answer is yes, which for him it was. So let's do the math here. So we got 5 years till you're a senior. Let's say we work out even a little bit, or like we work out really consistently. So that's going to be, let's say 200 days a year, which is, a lot, but you take in long summer camps. He's the type of kid he comes to Hardwood Academy, he has from the jump. Okay, so we got 5 years of 200 workouts or times we're in the gym together. So that's 1,000 times all the shots or the ball handling repetitions or whatever the situation is. If we're emotionally up and down, hanging on each of these occurrences, it is going to be tiring. We're never going to get there. So I need you to know that I'm not counting. I told him, I'm like, I left that workout energized and pumped. So just so you know where my headspace is, I'm not judging you. I'm not grading you day by day. It's a marathon.
Sure.
So let's just have the mental maturity and the bandwidth to just be like, all right, I know that this is going to have some trials and tribulations, but I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's how you can meet a player a lot of times. I asked him, I said, he had just gone to a tryout for an AAU team, and I asked him, I said, how do you feel you rank against those kids that you tried out against? Because I know most of the kids, part of the AAU organization. And so I asked him, and first of all, kids are often surprised when you just ask them a question, then don't say anything and let them just speak on it. And he says, oh, I don't know, probably like middle, bottom half. And I said, for me, the goal is as we progress through this training, if I ask you that question, it should be, what kind of a stupid question is that?
Right.
Like, I'm going out here to play. Like, if you're going to make me answer, it's going to be, I feel like I'm as good as anybody. So why are we talking about this so long?
Yeah.
So a lot of times I feel like parents or players slot themselves into places good and bad, and really that doesn't serve us that well. It needs to just be, how far can we push it,
Sure.
and how much can we get out of this time that we have together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it kind of sounds like you're teaching life lessons as well as basketball. Really. I mean, all these kids are going to have that same sort of discipline once they find a career they want to pursue their passions.
Totally. Unintentionally, it's about being real about the game. I mean, there is some obviously intention on trying to build young people, but if there's ever a reflection of life, it's basketball. You have to have a level of responsibility that you must uphold. You need others to do so. You need to communicate and operate together for long periods of time. You're not going to make every shot, so we know that now. You are going to have some turnovers, so is everybody else at times. The key is reducing those, improving, right? Mm-hmm. We don't always just want to miss every shot and just say, well, that's life. Recognize that they're going to occur. We're going to have to go through some stuff to get where we're going. Don't forget that. Mm-hmm. Don't forget it. You have a bad game and you're driving home, whether it's a bad game or a bad job interview or a tough day at work, the answer is to not complain, point fingers, have excuses, nor spend any time considering any of those factors.
Sure.
The answer is, all right, so I got a game tomorrow. I got to practice tomorrow. What am I going to do next to try to get better? And that's something that I feel like in any successful team I've ever been a part of, or organization, or on whatever scale, it is how people handle adversity. Mm-hmm. Whether it's internal or external adversity is everything. I just listened to, we watched The Last Dance, and Reggie Miller was on there talking about how with 6 minutes to go, they lost a tip ball. They were up 3. There was a jump ball. They lost the jump ball, and the ball got swung around to Steve Kerr. He made a 3 to tie it. Now, this is with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of this game, okay? And their description of it from himself and some of the other Pacer players was, at that point, I just knew we were done. At that point, everything changed. At that point, this. And I'm thinking, and everybody's just kind of accepted it, the people I was watching it with, and I'm thinking, how weak are you? That with 6 minutes to go, something bad occurring, literally just flew everything off the rails, and now that's your excuse, and you've used it for 25 years.
Sure.
So, where vice versa, I wish that wasn't part of the story or part of the excuses. It's, okay, now we're tied with 6 minutes to go, so make the next thing occur that we need to have occur.
Sure.
So I've just always tried to drive that home, like, the next play mentality or whatever, but like it's deeper than that sometimes. Sometimes it's your emotional strength.
Yeah.
Can I fight through something? Can somebody see me do something poorly that I care about?
Yeah.
And still go and try to do it again. And so I think that helps a lot, and it's basketball now, but hopefully it's something that these players take with them for a long time, that, if you walk out and your car tire's flat, that it doesn't just end up in you getting a bunch of cursing at your significant other or whatever.
Sure.
Same way that if someone does something wrong or a ref makes a bad call, you don't automatically get a technical and lose your mind.
Yeah.
Like, control your mind, control your words. Weapons can be used against you or, for you. So
for sure.
That's what we try to drive home with those players.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you obviously have been watching The Last Dance. I haven't watched any of it, but everybody's telling me I gotta do it, and I want to. Are you gonna tell the kids to watch that too, or is there any sort of like materials or things that you have them kind of do as homework on their own, other than the physical aspect of it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great question. You should watch The Last Dance because, I think it's a very creative piece. It obviously took a lot of time and effort and work. And so you can I appreciate that, for what it is as far as just a creative piece that we're all able to enjoy. And also, born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, the days of waiting for 30 minutes of inside stuff on Saturday to hear one player talk about behind the scenes stuff. It's so cool to have everything, in front of us. And in the same way, that's, I'm excited to work with you and have so much illumination towards what we're doing. But there's a few places I point players towards, and, it's where I look towards motivation or, ways to try to capture being just steadfast. Mm-hmm. Kobe Bryant, rest in peace to Kobe. He was the epitome of fighting through stuff.
Sure. Things
going wrong, mind and will over any other factor that you could create internally or externally for him. He airballs 3 shots as a rookie in a playoff game, and everyone's calling him a failure. And what he ended up being, he wouldn't be able to do that without that. And plus, he's just very well spoken.
Yeah.
And so I would always try to capture that. And a lot of times with our players, because Hardwood Academy is so long, or, when we were with teams and stuff, we were intentionally sitting down and watching those sorts of things and those sorts of players. Nipsey Hussle, he speaks well. Rest in peace to Nipsey. I some of those, the way he spoke and the way he approached, the marathon that this all is, hits me deeply and impacted me deeply. And sometimes I feel like that's able to be captured again with these players. And then I also try to see what motivates them. Mm-hmm. What does a player listen to? What does a player watch? What do you like? Thinking back to the early training days, there's a guy named, speaking of progressing something over the course of time, there's a guy named Devin Williams. So on Instagram, he's like in the lab, Mr. 10,000 hours. His original YouTube videos when he had like a couple thousand followers were he was training these 2 dudes named Matt and Kyle Wong. And these are 5'10" dudes, not ripping the rim down or anything like that, but he worked them out and recorded it and edited it and made these videos. And they both just pushed the basketball thing till the wheels fell off. They're both, again, dudes that aren't super athletic or super had all these scenarios that led them to something great, but they all played college basketball. They got a lot out of it. So those were some of my early influences, and my ongoing influences, I guess.
Yeah,
would be those individuals.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you at some point looking to like do any of the trainings online, or like if a kid can't make it one week, like are you looking to do sort of like, and the reason I ask that is not because I would help with that maybe, but I'm just curious because the COVID thing, I've worked with so many businesses and organizations, nonprofits, that had to take their model online overnight. And so I think that because people have been so familiar with that sort of life for like 3 months, I'm just wondering if there's stuff, maybe not just for the Hardwood Academy, but for the YMCA in general, that you would offer more online and try to reach that audience. Because I've actually heard this from numerous people, but they feel like they're having a better impact reaching people, like maybe through a Zoom call or things like that, because I think when you go to a place or you're having a conversation with somebody, your guard is kind of up. But if you're talking to somebody over Zoom, mm-hmm. like there's a safety in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just kind of the feedback that I've been getting with people that like have clients or like, and so I'm just wondering if there's some sort of digital model coming to the YMCA.
That's an interesting way to frame it. Yeah, I'm envisioning a player walking into a crowded gym and some of the hesitancies that they might have, mm-hmm. In a typical setting that may be, extinguished a little bit with being able to do it on your computer. I think that, doing something that you're passionate about and doing something that you want to see do well leads you to be able to collaborate with people. So mm-hmm. I feel like I wouldn't be sitting here with you without, hard work and passion towards that. And so that leads you to the ability to expand in your opportunities. I don't know how to do that really well, like just purely produce the content. Sure. I could be in the gym and know what to say to the players, but getting it into a friendly or a viewer friendly platform isn't something that I know how to do or do well. So
sure,
I think the answer is yes. And the kind of the initial foundation is what leads you to be able to do that and expand in those ways. There is no, better time to reach out to those. And if you want to go to the bigger scale, it's really a necessity 100% to be able to spread like that. But it's about capturing it and putting out something that you could be proud of. I could and have done, iPhone videos and stuff like that. And I think it's a good try, but in order for it to be something that you're really proud of and try to replicate what it's actually like to be in the gym with someone, you need others. You need people to help collaborate with. And so the answer is yes. So if you're ready to start coming in and scheduling some film sessions, we're good. But no, I think that's it. I think it's something that definitely interests me. I think that the wide, spanning impact that you can have is exciting. Mm-hmm. But just the realization of get the right people with the right similar passion for what they do around you, and then hopefully that'll come out, and then you can produce something that you're proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just so interesting. I know we started off talking about COVID, but just what I'm hearing is like so many people, their work wouldn't allow, working from home. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden it's like people are actually being really productive. So it's kind of interesting hearing that feedback that, some of those old sort of mentalities are being shattered. And I'm just being really surprised with how much people are doing at home.
What line of work are like some of the people that you're referring to? Just out of curiosity, I can see that you're.
It's basically like cubicle workers. So like insurance, trying to think of accounting, different things like that. Obviously, like with insurance and some of those, they still need to meet with clients and have some office hours. But I think what's interesting is talking to some of these business owners and them saying, I wasn't thinking about working from home, but because of COVID, because of what we were forced to do, we're actually starting to realize that it's not that bad and people are getting their work done and it's being a little bit more efficient because when you're at home, and of course you have to assume that these people are taking their job seriously, right? So not everybody's gonna, because it takes one person to ruin working from home, right, for an organization. But it's just really interesting.
That is interesting. With difficulty or with occurrences like something like the virus shutting down the nation for 2 months, with that over the course of history and time has led to invention and ingenuity. If I want to pull something and it's getting heavier and heavier and heavier, I'm going to invent something like the wheel.
Sure.
So I am in my lane of this job that you can do and have done, and everything's going just fine. When the door is closed on that, now what do? Are you really about it?
Yeah.
Are you really, you say that you're invested in clients or doing whatever it takes to, meet their needs, whatever the business is. And it's like, okay, well, how creative are you going to be? How ambitious are you going to be to continue to the level of service or better?
Yeah. And
so again, over the course of time, just that's what humans do, or like what you'd hope that they do. Some fall off. Some I'm sure would look at it like a vacation, but I'm sure that's refreshing from, somebody in your position that can help bridge that gap and connect those dots. Because again, I could have all the ambition I wanted to. It'd be a million miles away for me to be able to actually create content versus that. So that's something that you can feel good about. I mean, I'm sure if they haven't told you, I'm sure they are, as am I, like appreciative of, the outlets that, you're able to provide. But yeah, I would say you kind of get to, Nipsey said it, when it hits the fan, you get to find out who you are. Yeah. And so, every time like now.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that, because the kind of work that I was doing changed. So I wasn't going out and filming, or if I did a podcast, it was over a Zoom call, that kind of thing. But it became more of people sending me cell phone videos, stuff they shot on their own, So they kind of were dipping their toes in that because of the limitations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was editing the content and kind of making it more presentable. But yeah, it was just interesting because all of a sudden these people who were not tech savvy, it was they got thrown into it and they had to do it. Otherwise, their audiences weren't going to be reached.
I think it's cool in a way to see that happen, and
yeah, me too.
It adds a little bit of like validity to people that do it that way, that show that effort. Again, kind of going back to like, the why in general. I don't know if we've been able to reach people in the total manner that we would like, but the effort has been there.
Yeah.
And then so when you start to, have someone like you to bridge the gap, then it can be realized. But again, in the beginning, you got to have the want to try to reach people. And so
for sure,
they can add a lot to it. And also, once you get back to being able to do things, more of the things we did prior, you realize that, hey, I can do really well at this. And in addition, like you said, opening their eyes to the whole world that is out there that is producing content or reaching, people through the different streams that you can. So
yeah, for sure. Well, and what's really interesting with getting to know the YMCA staff, this is like one of the most passionate groups of people I've ever met, and it's really cool. And so when we started talking about collaborating and working on stuff, I'm like, this is a gold mine. And not that it, it's like you almost need that outside perspective, because if you're part of an organization, so like you've been doing the Hardwood Academy for 4 years, I'm sure it's refreshing to come like hear from an outside perspective from somebody that just like learned about it. And after hearing about it, I'm like, well, yeah, we're going to support this, and so it's just, but what's interesting is it seems like everybody that is a part of the staff has that kind of passion and brings that drive and feels like they're doing exactly what they want to be doing.
That's a refreshing thing to hear you say. I said to you, you have a family, a young daughter, and so from the perspective of someone who is aware of a lot of things that the Y does, but also from the outside, it's refreshing to hear you say that. We talk about criticism, or even like back to the parents and stuff like that. Let's say, at the Y we have over 4,000 members, all of our associations, right? And so if 1% of them are upset and are in your email inbox, that's a lot of people in your, like criticism in your inbox. So to hear that is definitely refreshing. I think it happens for a few reasons. The Y oftentimes, the seed is planted early. They were a part of the Y or a part of a similar situation that they value as part of their development as a young person. I love swimming lessons at the Y, or I used to play basketball there with my dad, or I go and I walk the track with my mom when I was younger. And now, so that is like the in, right? And then, the Y is encouraging community involvement and volunteerism. So what I've seen from a lot of my peers is that there's something that got them hooked.
Yeah.
And now they're given the opportunity to try to grow on that. And it's varied, right? For me, it's basketball, you'd probably say, but there's people that feel equally as strong about fitness or, any level of healthy living or social responsibility that the Y has. So
yeah,
I think it's kind of like, you don't consciously think about it when you're just doing your job and trying to do the best you can. But like a lot of times I think it's woven within the fiber of us that, hey, what we're doing is important. And it's really nice and refreshing to hear some of that positive reinforcement that,
yeah,
we're reaching people and people are happy about that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and recently, I mean, and we talked a little bit about this before we started, but I mean, that's really why I wanted to start the podcast. Is I'm meeting all these people that are super passionate about what they're doing. Not only are they passionate, but they want to be the best at it. And so like when I hear you talk about like the Hardwood Academy and you want to put it on the map, like you want to put Kalona on the map for like the best basketball camp in Iowa, that's pretty rad, and it's like what you were talking about working with the players. Is it going to be work? Yeah. And it's going to be a mental game. and it's going to be sort of a marathon, like you're saying. Well, everybody's got that mentality at the Y, you know, and it's just so cool because I guess what I'm saying is like as a parent, I love Kalona even more than I did growing up here. And I appreciate the people that are like, let's make this thing, let's put our town on the map. I love that.
That's awesome. You know, in hearing you talk, I think it's so when it comes to passion, let's just say basketball, right?
Yeah.
So like, as the director who, and I don't say selfishly speak here, but so how am I going to spend my days as someone in my career, right? A couple things. I'm not going to make it to the NBA anytime soon, I don't think. But I have such a love for the game that I'm finding a way to make my new Jordans the same shoes I wear to work.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're able to capitalize and work in an area that we love at the Y often because it's so varied.
Yeah.
And then also I think that maybe some of what you're talking about is, at least I feel it, and I know some of my peers feel it, that being real about the pressure. Mm-hmm. If we had a restaurant and you didn't like the restaurant, you'd go to a different restaurant. If there's not going to be a ton of rec centers in a place like Kalona or Washington or Wellman, a community like that. So if we're not doing well, it's going to be a problem because people need to go out to eat and people need to go to the rec. So
sure.
they can't just go to the other basketball place or the other pool, the other fitness class that's going on. You know, I think there's a responsibility to people that, hey, if we're going to have these things set up for us, if we're going to have these opportunities and these, you know, facilities, that a guy like you and your family needs to know that they're getting a good experience, so that, that they're at least have ambition with it. Yeah. Versus, you know, my worst nightmare is, you know, the word of mouth of, oh yeah, I went to the Y and this happened and it was bad. Yeah. Like just trying to avoid that on a, you know, individual, then ultimately the grand scale all the time is kind of how I spend my time. Yeah. Yeah, dude, I totally get that. Yeah, man. Awesome. So we're at the end of our time. So just any closing thoughts? Like, is there anything that you want to say to people out there that are, you know, in the community, thinking about getting involved in programs? Yeah, definitely. It's an exciting time. I know it's a trying time for, you know, our members or people in the community, but I think that we're going to work through it together. One thing about, you know, you speak about community, smaller towns, or, you know, YMCA associations. It's different than just living amongst each other or, you know, being on a treadmill next to somebody else. You know, there is that sense of community where we're more than just a gym and a swim. So we're anxious to get back to that, and the familiar faces that we have, and you know, encouraging new. Yeah, again, when met with adversity, you kind of find out who you are. So I think, you know, us as a YMCA organization get to find out a little bit what we're about, and you know, hope the community sees the benefit in that. So I think that's kind of how I feel about stuff right now. I think it's go time. I think it's, you know, we talk about excuses or, you know, missing shots and playing through it. I think it's our time right now to play through it a little bit, because much in the same way of, like, maybe you've heard like somebody say, like, nobody cares, work harder. My thing also is, you know, nobody cares unless you win. Now, what winning means changes from things to things, but, like, you know, none of these factors will matter nor get us off the hook if we're not able to execute. So feeling that right amount of pressure and feeling that right amount of just desire to meet people where they need to be met, to have you know, part of that healthy pillar of their daily lives or what they want to wrap their family around and stuff. So yeah, dude, that's awesome. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and we're wishing the best of luck to the Hardwood Academy and the slow open of the YMCA, man. John, thanks to you, man, and Storyline Media for, you know, sponsoring the Y and Hardwood Academy. And I'm honestly just kind of glad, like we were saying, I'm glad I got on the pod before you hit that that big Spotify deal or whatever. So
Spotify deal,
I'll take
right.
it.
Yeah, that Joe Rogan money.
That's that. No, yeah, that. How many figures is that? 100 million? I don't even know.
Dude, yeah, I
But,
can't even.
dude, shout out to you, man. It's been awesome to connect with you and get to know you. And so I just appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Cool. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.